The smell hit the private school drop-off before the man did. Parents in Range Rovers turned in disgust because a homeless man was standing at the gates where only the wealthy belonged. The smell hit the drop-off line at Oak Creek Preparatory Academy before the man was even visible. It was a sharp, vinegary tang of old sweat, wet wool, and the distinct metallic odor of unwashed humanity. It cut right through the exhaust of the idling Range Rovers and the cloud of expensive perfume hovering over the parents gathered at the wrought iron gates. Mrs. Higgins, the vice principal of Oak Creek, wrinkled her nose. She was a woman who viewed the world as a spreadsheet. Everything had a place, and everything that was out of place was an error to be deleted. She adjusted her silk scarf, clicked her pen, and marched toward the source of the olfactory offense. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice shrill enough to stop the chatter of the PTA moms. You cannot be here." The man was a heap of rags leaning against the pristine brick pillar that bore the school's golden crest. He was ancient, his face a topographical map of wrinkles and grime, hidden behind a beard that looked like a bird's nest. He wore a trench coat that was 3 sizes too big and held together by twine. He didn't seem to hear her. He was staring intently at the stream of students in their navy blue blazers flowing into the courtyard. His eyes, milky and blue, darted from face to face, searching. "I said move!" Mrs. Higgins stepped closer, pulling a can of floral air freshener from her pocket, a weapon she carried for sanitation emergencies. She sprayed a mist into the air between them, a passive-aggressive barrier of chemical lilac. "You are scaring the children. This is private property. We pay thousands of dollars in tuition to keep this environment sterile." A group of 7th graders stopped to watch, snickering. They were the golden children of senators and CEOs, raised to believe that discomfort was something you paid someone else to remove. "Look at him," one boy, a bully named Trent, laughed. "He looks like a trash bag with legs." "Ew, he's drooling," a girl added, covering her nose theatrically. The homeless man finally looked at Mrs. Higgins. He didn't look angry. He looked confused. He reached into his deep, filthy pocket. Mrs. Higgins flinched, stepping back. "He's got a weapon! Security!" The man didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a crumpled, yellowed photograph. He held it out with a trembling hand. Have you seen her?" he rasped. His voice sounded like dry leaves skittering on pavement. Mrs. Higgins slapped the hand away. The photo fluttered to the wet pavement, landing face down in a puddle. "I don't care what you're selling or what you're on," Mrs. Higgins sneered, looming over him. "You are a stain on this institution. You are disgusting. If you are not gone in 10 seconds, I am calling the police to have you hauled away like the garbage you are." She looked around at the students, performing for her audience. "Let this be a lesson, class. This is what happens when you don't apply yourselves. You become this." The man shrank back, clutching his chest, his eyes filling with tears of humiliation. He bent down to retrieve his photo from the mud. That was when the silence broke. "Don't you dare touch him." The voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that froze the courtyard. The crowd parted. Leo stepped forward. Leo was 14, a scholarship student who wore a blazer that was slightly frayed at the cuffs. He kept his head down, got straight A's, and tried desperately to remain invisible in a school where net worth was a personality trait. But today, Leo was not invisible. He was shaking, his fists clenched at his sides. He walked past the snickering Trent. He walked past the stunned Mrs. Higgins. He walked straight up to the smelly, trembling man. Leo didn't cover his nose. He didn't flinch at the smell. He knelt down in the mud, ruining his uniform trousers, and picked up the wet photograph. He wiped it gently on his sleeve and handed it back to the man. Then, Leo stood up and put his arm around the man's grime-caked shoulders. "Leo?" Mrs. Higgins gasped, her face turning a blotchy red. "Get away from him. You'll catch a disease. Do you know who this is?" Leo looked Mrs. Higgins dead in the eye. "Yes," Leo said, his voice ringing across the silent courtyard. That's my grandpa. The shockwave was instantaneous. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Leo's grandpa? The scholarship kid? I knew he was poor, but this… Mrs. Higgins looked as if she had swallowed a lemon. She blinked rapidly, her brain trying to process this violation of social hierarchy. Your grandfather? She stammered. She looked at the man, who was now leaning into Leo, sobbing quietly. Then she looked at Leo, the boy she had labeled as promising but underprivileged. Yes, Leo lied. He lied with the conviction of a boy who knew what it felt like to be looked at like you were nothing. He squeezed the man's shoulder tighter. And he's not garbage. He's a war hero. He has Alzheimer's. He wandered off last night. The lie came easily. Leo's actual grandfather had died before he was born. Leo lived with his single mom in a one-bedroom apartment 3 bus rides away. But he knew this man. Not personally, but he knew the look in his eyes. It was the look of someone who had lost their anchor. Well, Mrs. Higgins sniffed, trying to regain her composure, but failing. That explains the hygiene, but it does not excuse the disruption. You need to get him off campus, Leo, immediately. This is not a nursing home. I'm taking him home, Leo said firmly. You have a biology midterm in 10 minutes, Mrs. Higgins warned, narrowing her eyes. If you leave campus, it's an automatic 0, and with your financial aid status, you can't afford a 0. It was a threat. A cruel, targeted threat designed to force the boy to abandon the man. Leo looked at the man. The man was trembling, looking at Leo with a mixture of confusion and desperate gratitude. Come on, Grandpa, Leo said softly. Let's get you some coffee. Leo turned his back on Mrs. Higgins. He turned his back on the midterm. He guided the shuffling man through the parting sea of stunned students and out the iron gates. As they walked away, Mrs. Higgins shouted after them. Don't bother coming back today, Leo. I'll be calling your mother. 3 blocks away, safely out of sight of the school, Leo steered the man into Jerry's diner. It was a greasy spoon, where Leo washed dishes on weekends for extra cash. Leo! Jerry, the owner, looked up from the grill. You cut school? And who's the friend? He needs food, Jerry. Put it on my tab, Leo said, guiding the man to a booth in the back corner. Tab? You ain't got a tab, kid. You got a paycheck coming. Jerry sighed, looking at the man. All right, scrambled eggs and toast coming up. But keep him in the booth. He smells like the East River. Leo sat opposite the man. Up close, the smell was intense, but Leo ignored it. He poured a glass of water. Drink, Leo said. The man drank greedily, water spilling into his beard. He set the glass down and looked at Leo. His eyes cleared for a second. You called me Grandpa, the man whispered. I know, Leo said. I'm sorry, I couldn't let her talk to you like that. The man smiled, revealing missing teeth. I had a grandson once. He looked like you. Sharp eyes. What's your name? Leo asked. Arthur, the man said. He tapped his temple. Just Arthur. The rest of it falls out of the holes in here. Okay, Arthur. Why were you at the school? Arthur's face crumpled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the photo again. It was drying now. It was a black and white picture of a beautiful young woman standing in front of a building. I built it, Arthur whispered. Leo leaned in. You built what? The arch. Arthur traced the air with his finger. The archway, the brick, the mathematics of the curve. It has to be perfect or the load bears down. The load always bears down. Leo looked at the photo. The woman was standing in front of Oak Creek Academy, but the building looked new in the photo. There was no ivy on the walls. Who is she? Leo asked. Eleanor, Arthur wept. My Eleanor. She teaches there. I was waiting for her. She said she'd meet me by the gate at 4. Leo felt a chill. Oak Creek had been built in the 1950s. If this woman taught there when the building was new… Arthur, Leo said gently. What year do you think it is? 1962, Arthur said promptly. Then his face clouded. No, that's not right. It's cold, I'm lost, boy. I'm so lost. Jerry arrived with the eggs. Arthur ate with his hands, ravenous. Leo watched him, his mind racing. He had saved the man from Mrs. Higgins, but now what? He couldn't take him to school. He couldn't take him to his mom's tiny apartment. She was working a double shift at the hospital and would freak out. He needed to find out who Arthur really was. "Arthur," Leo said, "do you have a last name?" "Sterling," Arthur mumbled through a mouthful of toast. "Arthur Sterling." Leo pulled out his phone. He Googled Arthur Sterling, architect. Nothing. He Googled Oak Creek Academy architect. The results loaded. Designed by the firm of Mitchell and Vance. He tried Arthur Sterling missing. Nothing. Then, Leo looked at the photo again. He zoomed in with his eyes. The woman, Eleanor, was holding a book. The title was visible on the spine. Advanced Calculus. Leo typed into his phone, Eleanor Oak Creek math teacher, 1960s. A digital archive from the local library popped up. An obituary from 2005. Eleanor Sterling, beloved mathematics chair of Oak Creek Academy for 40 years, passes away at 75. Survived by her husband, Professor Arthur Sterling, former dean of mathematics at City University. Leo froze. He looked at the beggar eating eggs. This wasn't an architect. This was a professor of mathematics. A genius. Leo scrolled down. There was a follow-up article from 2010. Former math dean vanishes from nursing home. Professor Arthur Sterling, suffering from early-onset dementia following the death of his wife, walked out of the Shady Acres facility yesterday. He had been missing for 15 years, presumed dead, and he had walked back to the school because that was the last place he remembered being happy. Leo looked at Arthur. "Professor?" Arthur's head snapped up. The title seemed to trigger a reflex. He sat up straighter. "Yes?" Arthur said, his voice changing, becoming deeper, authoritative. "The variable, young man, is irrelevant if the constant is unstable." Then he slumped back down. "Where is Eleanor?" Leo's heart broke, but he had a plan. The biology midterm was over. The lunch period was beginning. Mrs. Higgins was standing in the cafeteria, holding court with the other teachers. She was recounting her morning victory. "And then he just marched the vagrant off," she scoffed, sipping her tea. "Claimed it was his grandfather. The audacity. I've already drafted the expulsion paperwork. We can't have students who lie and bring health hazards onto—" The double doors of the cafeteria slammed open. Leo walked in. He wasn't wearing his blazer. He was in his shirt sleeves, and next to him, cleaned up as best as possible in the diner bathroom, was Arthur. The cafeteria went silent. "I told you not to come back," Mrs. Higgins shrieked, dropping her tea. "Security, get them out!" "He has a right to be here," Leo shouted, his voice cracking but loud. "More right than you! He is a homeless trespasser. He is Professor Arthur Sterling," Leo yelled. "He's Eleanor Sterling's husband." The name hung in the air. At the head table, the school's elderly librarian, Mrs. Gable, dropped her fork. She stood up, her hand flying to her mouth. She had worked at Oak Creek for 50 years. She walked slowly toward Leo and Arthur. "Arthur?" Mrs. Gable whispered. Arthur looked at the woman. He blinked. "Martha? Martha Gable?" Mrs. Gable let out a sob. "Oh my God, it is him. Everyone thought you were dead." Mrs. Higgins looked frantic. "I don't care who he was. Look at him. He's a mess. He's senile. He's disturbing the peace." "He built the curriculum you teach." Leo stepped in front of Arthur, shielding him from Mrs. Higgins's venom. "He spent his life teaching people. He loved this school because his wife loved it. And you sprayed him with air freshener like he was a bug." Leo turned to the students watching, phones recording everything. "Mrs. Higgins told us this morning that if we don't apply ourselves, we'll end up like him," Leo said, his voice trembling with rage. "Well, this man has a PhD. He's a genius. He lost his wife and his mind broke. It didn't happen because he was lazy. It happened because he's human. And if applying ourselves means turning into someone like you, Mrs. Higgins, someone who mocks a sick old man, then I don't want to succeed. A pin could have dropped in the silence that followed. Then, slow clapping started. It wasn't Trent the bully. It was the quiet kids first, then the athletes, then the entire room. Mrs. Higgins stood there, red-faced and sputtering. The narrative had shifted. She wasn't the protector of standards anymore. She was the villain. The police did come, but not to arrest Arthur. They came to escort him, gently, to the hospital. Mrs. Gable rode in the ambulance with him, holding his hand, talking to him about Eleanor. Leo sat in the principal's office. His mother had arrived, still in her scrubs, looking terrified. Principal Henderson, a stern man who rarely intervened in daily affairs, sat behind his desk. Mrs. Higgins sat in the corner, looking smug. "Well," Principal Henderson said, steepling his fingers, "this is quite a mess." "He disrupted the campus, lied to a faculty member, and left during an exam," Mrs. Higgins said quickly. "The handbook is clear. Expulsion." "He saved a man's life," Leo's mom said, her voice fierce. "He identified a missing person. You should be giving him a medal." "He lied," Henderson said. "He said it was his grandfather." "I adopted him," Leo said quietly. Henderson looked at the boy. "Excuse me?" "I don't have a grandpa," Leo said, "and he didn't have anyone. So in that moment, at the gate, I decided he was my family. Because family doesn't let family get treated like trash." Henderson looked at Mrs. Higgins. Then he looked at the viral video playing on his tablet, the video of Leo defending Arthur in the cafeteria. It already had 50,000 views. The comments were calling for Mrs. Higgins's head. "Mrs. Higgins," Henderson said slowly, "did you really spray a chemical agent on a dementia patient?" I was neutralizing an odor," she stammered. "You were neutralizing your career," Henderson said. "Pack your things. You're on administrative leave pending an investigation by the board. And frankly, I wouldn't bet on coming back." Mrs. Higgins gasped. She looked at Leo, then stormed out of the room, her heels clicking a retreat of defeat. Henderson turned to Leo. "You missed your midterm, Leo." "I know," Leo said, bracing himself. "I'm rescheduling it for tomorrow morning," Henderson said. "Go home. Get some sleep. You did good, kid." The assembly hall was packed. Leo stood on the stage, adjusting the microphone. He looked out at the sea of faces. "Welcome," Leo said, "to the dedication of the Arthur and Eleanor Sterling Mathematics Wing." In the front row, sitting in a wheelchair, was Arthur. He was clean-shaven, wearing a sharp tweed suit. He looked frail, but happy. He was living in a specialized memory care facility paid for by the school's alumni association, who had been shamed into action by the viral story. Next to Arthur sat Leo's mom, and next to her was Mrs. Gable. Arthur didn't always know where he was, but today he was smiling. He held a program in his hand. After the speech, Leo walked down to the front row. Arthur grabbed Leo's hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Leo," Arthur said clearly. "Yeah, Professor?" "I remember the variable now," Arthur whispered, a twinkle in his eye. "What's the variable?" "Kindness," Arthur said. "It changes the whole equation." Leo smiled. "Yeah, it does." As the crowd applauded, Leo didn't look at the new plaque or the fancy donors. He looked at the old man who had started the day as a smelly nuisance at the gate and ended it as the grandfather Leo never had. Mrs. Higgins was never seen at Oak Creek again, but every student who walked through the gates now knew the story. They knew that the person standing outside might be a king in disguise or a genius who lost his way. And they knew that the smartest kid in school wasn't the one with the highest grades. It was the one who knew that when you see someone falling, you don't step over them, you catch them.